Pokémon Emerald, widely considered to be one of the hardest Pokemon games out there, and I have never beaten it before. In fact, I've only ever played this game once, and that was a Nuzlocke full of countless mistakes that ended up wiping to Norman slacking. That's right, contrary to what the title says, this isn't actually my first Nuzlocke, but I have played a grand total of 0 Pokemon since my last attempt, so it might as well be. Our journey begins by choosing the only starter in this game, taking out the Zigzagoon with no issue, and doing the exact same thing to May. Heading back over to Little Root, we pick up the Pokedex, acquire some Pokeballs, and can truly begin the run. I first had to Route 101 to catch a Poochyena, and that's when I realized I forgot to heal Mudkip after the battle with May. We're off to a great start. Thankfully, it decided to give into its fate on my second ball, and I know the general rule is to nickname all of your Pokemon so it hurts even more when you inevitably lose them, but personally, I've never really liked nicknaming, so we're just gonna stick with the default names for this run. I'm sure I'll still get attached to them. After a quick stop at the Pokemart, I noticed that I had almost 43,000 Pokédollars. I think this is a side effect of the rare candy cheat I'm using, which is perfect for people who just want a ton of Pokeballs at the start, but I didn't feel good cheating to that extent, so I just bought 10 Pokeballs and 2 potions. I'm not sure if I'd even have that money without this cheat, but I'm not gonna think about it. On Route 103, I found yet another Poochyena. I decided to use Species Claws this run alongside no items in battle, so after running around a little more, I found our true encounter, a level 4 Zigzagoon. Catching it was a little annoying with me missing tackle, but one ball later, and it joins the team. On Route 102, I ran into my first trainer, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a little terrified when the Poochyena started spamming Howl, but Mudkip, proving to be my trump card, managed to take it out before I used a single damaging move. My encounter in this route was a Lotad, which was somehow even more annoying than Zigzagoon because I missed 2 tackles in a row, but 3 balls later and it too was added to the team. I harvested some Oran berries before attempting to throw away all this extra cash I had, but don't worry, it'll find its way back later. Next, we have to help Wally catch a Ralts, and upon leaving Petalburg, a strange man named Scott appears behind me. Apparently, he's looking for talented trainers or something, and he walked away. Am I not a talented trainer? On Route 104, I found a Wurmple, was kinda hoping for Guts Tail, but this'll do. And a few rare candies later, it evolves into Cascoon, which from my knowledge is the worst of the 2 evolutions. But even so, it would still become one of the most important members of the team. One of the least important members, on the other hand, is found in Petalburg Woods, a slack-off that spends half the battle mimicking Luigi. We are never gonna use this. Nearing the end of the woods, we are forced into a battle with Team Aqua, and this might be one of the funniest fights in the run, because the 2 of us just kept spamming accuracy long moves, and this fool only hit me a single time. One abnormally difficult trainer later, and we make it to Rustboro City, home of the first gym leader, Roxanne. I bought a few more Pokeballs before challenging the gym, and oh look, all that money came back. To be completely honest, this gym can hardly be considered a challenge. Her 2 Geodudes die to a single water gun, and the only threatening opponent is her Nosepass. I knew it had the move Block, which could very easily lead to a death on my end, but I risked a turn and used Mud Slap to hopefully buy me a few free turns. The incoming Rock Tomb took out a third of my HP, so I subbed in my newly evolved Lawnmower that frame 1 got hit with Block. Absorb did way more damage than I was expecting, however, and although the Nosepass kept healing with potions and its Oran Berry, its aim was terrible, and all the damage I would take would be healed right back with Absorb. And just like that, the Stone Badge was mine, and my reward was Mudkip finally reaching her first stage. Following the gym, we have to go on a side quest to retrieve some stolen Devon goods, and to aid us is a Whismur that, like Slackoth, will end up sitting in the box for the rest of the run. I was unable to get a Rusturf Tunnel encounter due to it all being more Whismurs, and now it's time to deal with Team Aqua once again. A single Mud Shot later, and his Poochyena is already out for the count. With a Pokénav acquired, and a task with delivering a letter to this guy named Steven, we can sail over to Dewford Town, home of Brawly, the second gym leader, who, fun fact, can't hit ghost types at all. And it just so happens that in the nearby Granite Cave, we can find Sableye, but first on the agenda is picking up the Old Rod and heading to what is technically Route 107 for our first water encounter, a Magikarp. In its current state, it's just a useless fish, but we all know the beast it can turn into later. With that over with, we we can now enter Granite Cave for our Sableye. But deep down, I knew this run couldn't be that easy, and our encounter was instead a Makuhita. It joined our side with a single Great Ball, and now we can go deliver that letter to Steven. I don't have Flash. It took a while to find my way through the darkness, and of course now we're gonna find a Sableye, but 3 minutes later I escaped the abyss and finally reached Steven. Back at the Pokemon Center, I added Makuhita to the team, somehow made it through the gym without fighting a single trainer, and it was time to give Dustox some time in the spotlight. 2 confusions knocked out the Machop, and when Meditite came out, I was fully expecting him to spam Focus Punch every turn, but instead, he was actually smart, and set up both Reflect and Light Screen before going down to Gust. Brawly's last Pokemon is his own Makuhita, which was quite annoying to deal with due to Meditite pulling his weight for the first time ever, but I managed to get a lucky confusion off that made this one-on-one so much easier to handle. It still took a while due to Brawly's super potions, but even if we couldn't get a Ghost type, Bug Poison is almost just as strong. With the Knuckle Badge obtained, we now sail over to Slateport, where it's up to us to foil Team Aqua's plans for the 3rd time. I want to say it was at least slightly challenging, but no. A single Mud Shot takes out the Carvanha, a total of 3 Water Guns is too much for the Zubat, and just like the first, the second Carvanha dies to just 1 click of Mud Shot. This is where Archie introduces himself for the first time. But more importantly, Scott witnesses the rest of Team Aqua running off and at long last acknowledges my skills as a trainer. See, I knew I was talented. Our journey continues by heading up to Route 110 for our next encounter, an Electrike. He may not know any decent moves as of yet, but I can assure you he'll play his part in due time. Route 110 is infamous for the rival battle, also known as the ender of many Nuzlocke attempts. But when you know it's coming, it's very easy to prepare your team. Something I didn't do. May leads with a Wingull that Marshtomp can't do a whole lot against, so I swapped in Mightyena for the Intimidate and got hit by the 55% accurate Supersonic on the following turn. Thankfully, I was able to break through and take off over half of the Wingull's health bar, and on the following turn, I snapped out and gave myself an early lead. May responds with her starter, and I can see why so many people are scared of this fight. Grovyle hits fairly hard, and while it's not the most bulky Pokemon ever, one unlucky critical hit will likely leave you with 1 less team member. But I just kept spamming Gust hoping for the best, and that was enough to defeat it. May's last Pokemon is Slugma, who is extinguished by the mere sight of Marshtomp. Skipping through the rest of this route, we arrive in Mauville, where we can challenge the 3rd gym. Well, first we have to teach Wally that he won't get far relying solely on his starter, which of course Scott comments on, and after force-feeding my team rare candies, we can take on Watson. This gym is a major obstacle for any trainer who lacks ground types, but we have Marshtomp, and we can just mindlessly click Mudshot until we win. Well, that was an easy badge. Now we can head up to Route 111, where I forgot to pick up Rock Smash from Mauville, so 1 trip into a random guy's house later, we can break through the boulders, run directly into an optional trainer, and catch a Numel on Route 112. Further ahead in the fiery path, I found a Coughing, dodged all the optionals outside the cave, and was stopped by a Spinda on Route 113, another Pokemon I plan on dropping in the box until the end of time. I somehow walked into this kid who hides just as well as Team Rocket, and this is the moment I realized just how important status heals are. In this generation, taking steps in the overworld will still trigger poison damage, and when a 3rd Coughing took the stage, I could not risk any more damage on my starter. I sent in Dustox to absorb all poison effects, and 1 Psybeam defeated the last Coughing. I desperately started scrolling through my bag looking for an antidote, only to discover I didn't have one. And to add on to the stress, I got baited by this trainer. Fortunately, Aaron was easy to take down, but that still didn't solve my current situation. Just a few steps away was a Hyper Potion, however, which would have been my saving grace if Fall Arbor Town wasn't as close as it was. I took this opportunity to stock up on antidote and play with a Skitty for a bit, before making my way to Route 114 for my next encounter. An optional trainer I didn't mean to run into. But with that taken care of, our true encounter was a Swablu, a tiny little bird that, like Magikarp, would eventually become an addition to our team. But for now, she can sit in the box until the time is right. In Meteor Falls, I was attacked by a Zubat, who I accidentally killed, so I guess we're not getting a new Pokemon here. Instead, we learn about Team Magma for the first time, before winding back up in Rustboro. Here we can return to Rusturf Tunnel, smash through the boulders, and get gifted the Strength HM. A Upon exiting the cave, we find ourselves in Verdant Turf Town. The neighboring route is full of optional trainers, but even if you do get caught by them, the levels of their Pokemon are so much lower than yours, and I don't think I have to tell you just how simple it was to get through. Apparently this route leads back to Mauville, and by venturing back up to Route 112, we can now take the cable car up to Mount Chimney. This is our first real confrontation with Team Magma, and Marshtomp would soon demonstrate just how powerful she truly was. She's already swept through many trainers, and even the Mauville gym, and now we watch as our starter washes away all grunts who stand in our way. Not even Admin Tabitha can make us consider switching out. It's honestly comical that Marshtomp is the only Pokemon we need right now. But when it came to Team Magma's leader, I decided to let Hariyama have a chance to shine. Annoyingly, I was immediately hit with the sand attack, but that didn't stop Hariyama from landing not just an arm thrust, but a critical hit as well. Maxie used a super potion, but it was all in vain, as another critical arm thrust takes out the Mightyena. Zubat comes in next, and if Electrike could one-hit the previous, he would surely be capable of doing it again. The last opponent is Camerupt, who gave me a lot of trouble last time I was here, but with Marshtomp having the health to switch in, I can send out a few jets of water to conquer the eruption Pokemon. I haven't lost a single Pokemon yet, but now we can head down to Jagged Pass, catch a Spoink, and enter Lava Ridge, where the 4th gym resides. With Marshtomp still going strong, I was expecting this to be an easy victory, but I have no idea how to get through the maze, and our trump card reached level 30, which is a single level past the level cap of 29. I returned to the Pokemon Center to deposit Marshtomp in the box for now, and I decided now is a good time to bring out the Gyarados. This Serpent has an enormous attack stat, and by learning Bite on evolving, I should be dealing loads of damage. I forgot Dark was a special move in Gen 3. Unfortunately, Gyarados wouldn't become the beast I was hoping for, but even if Bite utilized his much weaker special attack, being a water type would still be super helpful for the Fire Gym. After running into like every trainer there was, I eventually found Flannery, and by using my rare candies, Gyarados learned Dragon Rage. It's not as strong as it would be earlier in the game, but it would still deal considerable damage. Flannery's Numel goes down in 2 Dragon Rages. And next up is Slugma, who after setting up a light screen, also goes down to no more than 2 Dragon Rages. Following that is Camerupt, who continues the trend of falling to a double Dragon Rage. But unlike the others, Camerupt set up a Sunny Day, allowing the Ace Torkoal to threaten even water types with fire attacks. But to start with, she used a track to essentially force me to switch out if I wanted to deal damage. I didn't really have a good answer for Torkoal, so I just sent in Lombre to use Fake Out for a little chip damage right before the harsh sunlight fades. I tried out Nature Power, which did almost no damage at all, and the Torkoal retaliates with Overheat, causing the first death of the run. And with its held item White Herb, the stat drop from using Overheat is completely negated. I brought Gyarados back out to finish the job with Dragon Rage, and the Heat Badge was mine. If there was one trainer to cause the first casualty, I have no shame with it being Flannery. But could I make it through the rest of the game without any further deaths? I said my goodbyes to Lombre at the Pokemon Center, and with the new level cap of 31, Marshtomp was allowed back on the team. Immediately following the 4th gym, we head back to Petalburg to get revenge on Norman's slacking. The first gym trainer had a Swellow, and while I wanted Marshtomp to take it out, she was not dealing nearly enough damage with water guns, so I let Manectric have a turn, and one spark zaps it down. Next room was a Wigglytuff that fell to a critical hit, and the last Pokemon was Zangoose, the true reason I lost my previous run. This Zangoose loves spamming Swords Dance, and because this trainer has a Hyper Potion, it's very difficult to take it out before it strikes. I could not afford losing our starter, so I made use of my 2 Intimidate Pokemon to hopefully give me a chance at survival. One Slash puts Gyarados in kill range, and I had to sub in his Intimidate brother. The upcoming critical hit just barely avoids a kill, so I brought out Manectric and prayed for a static, which luckily happened, and now I could use Spark to finish off the Zangoose. But if it didn't get greedy, this fight could have ended in disaster once again. The final obstacle was the gym leader himself, and I'd be lying if I said I was confident, but if I just stayed focused and didn't make any careless mistakes, I should be able to make it through. Out first is Spinda, who isn't much of a threat, but he did leave Marshtomp with just a little over half HP, and when the Vigoroth came out to clean up, I sent in Hariyama, who instantly got hit by a critical hit. I wasn't in killer range yet though, so I stood my ground and fought back with arm thrust, almost defeating the Vigoroth then and there. I figured Norman would probably use a potion here, and I spent a little time debating if it was worth risking that or not, but I ultimately decided to risk it, and it paid off by bringing Vigoroth back down to half HP. I didn't want to risk a critical hit however, so I swapped in my Netric to take the next hit and landed a critical hit of my own to take down Vigoroth. Up next is Linoone, who could very easily catch you off guard with Belly Drum. I just stayed in and used Spark, with the following headbutt putting me just below half. I decided to stay in for now and strike with another Spark, before understanding just how dumb it was to use the static Pokemon for the gym that uses Facade. Linoone heals with a Hyper Potion, and my next Spark brought it back to half HP, but considering damage rolls, I could not risk staying in. I sent in my Diana to make use of Intimidate, but a boosted Facade still dealt a terrifying amount of damage. I had Gyarados cut its attack even more, and was fortunately able to bring it down just a few turns later. And here came out Slacking, who I did actually have a plan for. My Dustox learned Protect on level up earlier in the game, and I knew that would be my only hope for defeating this gym. But the issue is that I couldn't safely switch in to take Slacking's first attack. My safest option was to use someone as a sacrifice, and I ultimately concluded that my Netric was the least important Pokemon I currently had. While Paralysis would be nice, the sheer damage Hariyama could deal was much more valuable to me, especially considering he was decently bulky as well, and so my Netric came out to allow me a safe switch into Dustox. And when I saw just how little damage I was dealing, I was terrified that I would run out of Protects before I could knock it down. A lucky critical hit alongside a Confusion, however, was just enough to get through the gym without any further losses. It was sad to lose my Netric, but thanks to him, the run continues. Not only that, but my Netric allowed me to see areas of Pokemon Emerald that I have never experienced before. So without a doubt, he's the true MVP of this run, and I will forever appreciate his sacrifice. After saying my goodbyes, I added Zigzagoon back to the team and headed back over to Mauville. Now that we have Surf, we can tackle Hoenn's many water routes, and the first in line was Route 118. Here I found a Tentacle that wouldn't be used for a while, and oh, hey Steven. On the following route I found an Oddish, and got poisoned by a random trainer I didn't see in time. If I didn't get poisoned earlier in the run, this encounter might have actually caused a death. But now that I have antidotes and paralyzed heals, status elements were much less threatening. I made my way over to the Weather Institute, where we have to battle Team Aqua to open the path ahead. The first grunt posed no challenge whatsoever, and by strategically avoiding a double battle, we can push through the rest until we come face to face with Shelly. Her Carvana falls to a single Mudshot because Marshtomp is just that strong, and my Diana managed to tank a Surf and hit me with a Swagger. I had faith Marshtomp would break through, and one Surf later led me to victory. We are gifted a Castform for our struggles, which will immediately join the other souls sitting in the box for the rest of the game, and with the path no longer blocked, I headed across the bridge just to be ambushed by a surprise May encounter that I had no idea was here. She led with Slugma, and I thought maybe the AI would sub in Grovyle for this matchup, but no, she just let me take an early lead. Now she decides Grovyle is the man for the job, so I swap out for Dustox, who could once again take it out with ease. Last up is Lombre, who foolishly thought Fake Out would work against my one Pokemon immune to Fake Out. A few gusts later, and the battle is won. She gives us Fly as a reward, and Scott appears out of nowhere to tell us that May was quite angry about her third loss, and then he left. Okay. Fortree City lies ahead, where we can head on over to the 6th gym. Marshtomp was once again one level too high to be used, and I grabbed Swablu without checking to see if it evolved before the gym. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. In addition, I also chose to box Hariyama for now, and decided to give Tentacool a chance on the team. I expected I could just barge straight into the gym now, but what a fool I was, because there's a Kecleon here blocking the way. I headed right towards the next route instead, and here I found an Absol, and he's not called the disaster Pokemon for nothing, because I got so tunnel visioned in trying to catch it that I let a Swords Dance boosted critical hit Razor Wind one-hit my Linoone. Gonna be honest, that was probably one of the worst plays I've ever made. At least Scott didn't see it. I ran into Steven moments later, who was testing out a new device on another invisible Kecleon, but since I just so happened to show up, he lets me try it out. And although I failed my encounter for this route, static encounters such as this are usually exceptions. Not that it really mattered if I caught it or not anyway, since it just ended up being another Pokemon banished to the box. But now that we can get past the Kecleon block in the gym, I went back to Fortree, added Spoink to the team, and just narrowly avoided a death with no more than 1 HP. double battles are scary. A few potions later, I got confused on a puzzle made for kids for a bit, but I managed to solve it and reach Winona without spending too much time. Spoink evolves right before the battle, and from here on out, I have no idea what Pokemon the gym leaders use. She starts with Swablu, and I planned on keeping it alive for a few turns so I could bait out all of her potions, but she had another idea in mind and threw out a turn 1 Perish Song. I let Gyarados send out one attack before negating Perish Song by swapping out to Grumpig. Winona did use one of her potions here, but I was unable to bait out more due to her switching out to Tropius. Psybeam did decent damage, but this stupid flying tree would heal everything back with Synthesis. A critical Aerial Ace did considerable damage, but knowing the Synthesis spam was coming, I just stayed in and kept throwing out Psybeams, and I cannot tell you how irritating it was to lose Grumpig from another critical Aerial Ace. Not only did she spam recovery moves for so many turns, she also got 2 critical hits and actually caused a death. But I didn't panic and sent in Gyarados to finish what Grumpig started. Winona's next Pokemon is her Perish Songing Swablu, and with a missed tackle, I let her set off a second one. One more tackle takes it down though, and Pelipper is up next. I subbed Gyarados out for my Deanna, and my god is Winona annoying. We have Perish Song, Synthesis Spam, and now Protect that works 2 turns in a row. Water Gun actually did quite a bit of damage, but by using Bite instead of Tackle, I could finish it off before it finished me. She sends out Skarmory next, and I have nothing to deal with this. I sent out Tentacruel to tank the incoming Steel Wing, and although she had another Hyper Potion, she failed to read how the ability Clear Body works, and she was down to her ace, Altaria. I wasn't expecting anything special from it, so I stayed in and fired another Surf, only to become aware that this Altaria knows Earthquake. Well, there goes Tentacruel, but Earthquake wasn't what I should have been worried about, because she also knows Dragon Dance. It was close, but Gyarados ultimately got the better of her, and I earned the Feather Badge. With 2 more goodbyes, I re-added Marshtomp and Hariyama to the team, and headed back out to Route 120. I was doing so well in the beginning of this run, and I think that caused me to become a little overconfident, and it resulted in many avoidable deaths. If I kept this up, I would surely meet my end further down the road. But for now, we have to focus on the path in front of us, and after catching a Marill from my water encounter, I entered Route 121. I tried to find a new Pokemon here too, but I kept getting duplicates and eventually gave up and just moved forward. I stumbled into Team Aqua who talked about Mount Pyre, so I surfed over to the nearby island, failed my encounter, and decided to head up instead of where I'm supposed to be going. I ended up running into a trainer with a Wobbuffet, and if you know anything about this Pokemon, you'll understand just how bad this was. I couldn't switch out due to Shadow Tag, and with the moves Counter and Mirror Coat, it's not hard to accidentally lose your best Pokemon. Luckily, I went for Counter against Surf, and just to be safe, I used a Mud Slap on my next turn to put it in kill range. Another Surf took it down, and I was so relieved another one didn't replace it. And right here is when Marshtomp evolved into her final stage. If she wasn't already the best Pokemon we had, she absolutely is now. Further ahead, I found the TM for Shadow Ball, which would surely come in handy for the next gym, and after following the intended path, we are thrown into several battles with Team Aqua. Swampert swept through all of them, and I gotta say, fighting unevolved Pokemon this late into the game is very underwhelming. I know it's to make the admins and leaders more intimidating, but even so, we should not be fighting Pokemon with less than 300 base stats on the road to Gym 7. But after annihilating the grunts, we find Archie, who decides he doesn't want to deal with Swampert right now, and retreats somewhere. Not long after I arrived in Lily Cove, and let me tell you, this section of the game was very confusing for me. I found the Team Aqua hideout next to the beach, but we're actually not supposed to be here right now, and instead, we have to head back to the Jagged Pass to uncover Team Magma's hideout. Silly me. I encountered a Torkoal shortly after entering, and I didn't know it at the time, but this guy actually knew very good moves. We're definitely going to be using him later. The rest of the hideout wasn't very hard. Swampert effortlessly destroys every Pokemon they have, but the one thing I wish I brought with me was Repels. Every 5 steps forces an encounter with a wild Pokemon, and that was how I spent the majority of my time storming the hideout. I slowly but surely made my way deeper, and at the end lies Maxie, who attempts to use the blue orb to control the red legendary. When that obviously doesn't work, Maxie blames it on the only other person here, and oh, now we're fighting him. While I can't sweep his entire team with one move, Swampert was capable of dealing with his lead Mightyena quite easily. Crobat Crobat came out next to fire off Confuse Ray, and although I broke through on my turn, I didn't want to get crit into hitting myself, so I switched in Gyarados for the Intimidate, as Wing Attack deals very little damage. Gyarados really doesn't have great moves right now, so I stuck with Dragon Rage as the next Wing Attack crits and leaves me with 3 HP. I got Gyarados out of there as quickly as I could, and when I tried to attack with Mightyena, I noticed that my team was 5 levels weaker than Maxie's. And this Crobat isn't making it any easier spamming Confuse Ray. I brought Swampert back out as it was the best option right now, and 2 Surfs are able to knock Crobat out. The final Pokemon is Camerupt, and 1 quad effective Surf later gives me the win. I thought maybe now I could enter the Aqua Hideout, but no. We're supposed to fly over to Slateport to witness Archie's submarine heist. Only after that can we enter the hideout, and I was lost for a while with all the warp tiles. But I did find a static encounter with Electrode, who for some reason I thought would survive a mud shot. But with Electrode out of the way, we can pick up a Master Ball that's just here, apparently. And like the Team Magma hideout, Swampert solos every grunt I come across. She can even take out Admin Matt with only 15 less health than what she had before. That opened up the path to Route 124, and a little surfing adventure later, I find myself in Moss Deep City, home of the penultimate gym. Here's where Swablu finally evolves into Altaria, and now we have a Pokemon that can truly make use of Dragon Dance. Don't ask me why I still haven't taught Gyarados Strength. I did go ahead and teach Shadow Ball to Mightyena, however, before heading in and attempting the gym puzzle. The trainers aren't much of an issue, but since this gym focuses on double battles, Tate and Liza would not be an easy fight. I enter battle with Swampert and Gyarados, while they lead with Xatu and Claydol. Xatu frame 1 confuses Gyarados, but he can break through and land a Surf to damage both opponents. Claydol goes for Earthquake, which only damages Swampert, and I fire off another Surf, dealing massive damage to Claydol. To get rid of confusion, I swapped Gyarados for Altaria, and Xatu strikes Swampert with a Psychic. Combining that with another Earthquake, and Swampert enters the Danger Zone. An additional Surf is able to defeat the Claydol, however, and it's replaced by Lunatone. I let Gyarados take Swampert's place, and Xatu's Psychic continues to deal big damage to me. But a critical Aerial Ace from Altaria is able to take it out, and Lunatone begins setting up with Calm Mind. I didn't want to leave Altaria in, so I switched to Mightyena, sent out another Surf with Gyarados, and got caught off guard by Solrock's Sunny Day. And Lunatone cuts my damage down even more by setting up a light screen. I was this close to entering panic mode, but I was able to stay focused and switch to using Bite with Gyarados and Shadow Ball with Mightyena. However, a Hypnosis from Lunatone puts Mightyena to sleep, and Solrock reveals that it knows Solar Beam. And with the recovery it got from its Citrus Berry, I would be almost guaranteed to take another. I kept using Bite with Gyarados, which was doing alright damage by itself, but a Psychic from Lunatone puts the Serpent in a red hell. Solrock then attacked with Solar Beam, and thankfully spared Gyarados from certain defeat. Dustox came out and easily tanked the next Solar Beam, which was actually a critical hit, but I failed to consider Lunatone's Psychic, and my lapse in judgment sadly marked her end. I commend you for your battle with Slappy, my friend. Now take a rest. I sent Altaria back out, as Mightyena continues to waste my time. This battle would be so much easier if I could just use Shadow Ball, but oh well. Altaria fires off a Dragon Breath, and Solar Beam puts Mightyena dangerously close to death. Meanwhile, Lunatone sits back and sets up a second Calm Mind. But with Light Screen fading this turn, it was likely to spare me a turn setting it back up. Altaria brought Solrock to a sliver of health next turn, and Mightyena finally decides to join the battle and takes it out with a Shadow Ball. Lunatone was still scary with its Calm Mind boost, but with Mightyena being immune to Psychic, I kept it in to continue spamming Shadow Balls. And 2 missed Hypnosis later, Lunatone was taken down, giving me the Mind Edge. I regrettably dropped the Fallen Dustox off in the box, and decided to grab Oddish to help with the next gym. Scott told me to check out the Moss Deep Space Center, and here I had to teach Team Magma once and for all that they will never beat Swampert. It was cool fighting side by side with Steven though. After the battle, he tells us to come to his house, and here he gives us the Dive HM to help us catch up to Archie. I was lost for so long trying to find the spot to dive, that after finding it, I arrive at the Seafloor Cavern, where I redeem myself for my mistake at Meteor Falls. A few strength puzzles later, and we find the TM for Earthquake, which I immediately taught to Swampert before dealing with Archie. Mightyena was pretty annoying with Scary Face and Swagger, but I was able to take it out with the help of Takedown's Recoil. When Crobat entered, I swapped out to Altaria and tried setting up a Dragon Dance, but I only got to +2 before I had to start attacking, and Aerial Ace did not deal as much damage as I thought it would. But with Fly being much more powerful, I took to the air as Archie for some reason potioned, and proceeded to miss my attack and almost die to an air cutter. I sent out Mightyena, who of course got instantly Confuse Raid, and of course I hit myself 2 turns in a row, so I brought out Gyarados, who also gets frame 1 confused, but unlike Mightyena, he was able to break through and eventually take Crobat down. Up last is Sharpedo, and Hariyama has no trouble taking it out with Arm Thrust. Archie attempts to control the blue legendary with the red orb, and now that both Groudon and Kyogre were awakened, Hoenn entered a severe weather crisis. Steven rushes over and reveals that the heavy rain is forming above Sootopolis, and after another journey of struggling to find the right dive spot, we meet back up with him and enter the Cave of Origin. Here we find Wallace, who directs us to Sky Pillar, and after asking Rayquaza for help, we are treated with one of the best cutscenes in all of Pokemon. Look, I didn't grow up with Emerald, but even still, this cutscene is peak, and now that Groudon and Kyogre are chill, we can take on the final gym. And this might be my favorite gym puzzle in all of Pokemon. Puzzles that make you use your brain like this are so much fun, and having a straight path to the gym leader for a successful attempt feels so rewarding. But enough about the puzzle, Love Disc. This Pokemon makes setting up a breeze. And although I hit myself in confusion, I ended up setting up 4 Dragon Dances before deciding to start attacking. Unsurprisingly, the Pokemon with 330 base stats dies to a single hit, and I think Juan knew he needed to do something about Altaria because he sent out his ace Kingdra right after. I knew Kingdra was bulky, so I tried to take it down in one hit with Fly, but it only dealt just over half, and Kingdra's Ice Beam took Altaria down before I could even react. That death really stung, but there was no time to be spent grieving with Kingdra still alive. I sent out Swampert to spam Earthquakes until this thing died, and while Rest was very annoying to deal with, Kingdra eventually fell without dealing any further damage to my team. Up next is Whiscash, who thought Amnesia would be enough to block my physical damaging Earthquakes, and while Celio survived long enough to drain the rest of my Earthquake PP, a Waterfall takes it out before Crawdon benches the scene. I swap out for Hariyama, who used a single Arm Thrust to knock it out, and that was the final gym badge acquired. All that's left is to make it through Victory Road and challenge the Elite Four. But was I truly ready for the battle ahead? I said farewell to Altaria, and decided to add both Torkoal and Golbat to the team before heading up to Evergrande City. And not even 1 minute into entering Victory Road, Wally appears out of nowhere demanding a battle. I was not prepared for this, but at least my team was fully healed. He leads with an Altaria that Swampert can't do much to, so I switch in Mightyena to deal big damage with Shadow Balls. But unfortunately, Dragon Breath paralyzed me, and just before I could deal the finishing blow, Wally pulls out a full restore. I chose to keep Mightyena in, and although Altaria knew Dragon Dance, I was able to take it out before I could sweep through my team. The next Pokemon is Delcatty, so I sent out Swampert, who is immediately confused by Supersonic. Does that surprise anyone? And not only did I hit myself, I also got put to sleep by Sing, another move with just over 50% accuracy. I was very annoyed and kept spamming moves until Swampert woke up, and this is where Delcatty threw out a Magical Leaf that nearly defeated our undefeated starter. And thank God I broke through confusion, or we would have lost our best Pokemon just before the Elite Four. Up next is Roselia, so I brought out Torkoal, who was hit with Toxic as soon as he entered, but next turn, Flamethrower took down Roselia with no effort. Magneton comes into her place, so I stayed in and fired off another Flamethrower for a second easy kill. Last up is Wally's starter, Gardevoir, so I subbed in Gyarados to attack with Bite, but Gardevoir decided to make my life hell with Double Team. And with the sheer number of 95% accurate moves I've missed this run, I was fully expecting to miss my next 20 attacks, but a Dragon Rage manages to land, dealing slightly more damage than Bite, but then a Psychic combined with Future Sight takes off over half of my HP. I ultimately decided to keep Gyarados in as I predicted Gardevoir would go for another Future Sight next, and after landing another Dragon Rage, my prediction turned out to be correct. I thought Wally would be out of full restores by now, but of course he still had one, and with my first Dragon Rage missing, Gardevoir sets up a second Double Team. Future Sight hits Gyarados, so I sent out Golbat expecting another Future Sight, but instead he goes for Psychic, which takes Golbat out 5 seconds seconds after making her first appearance. And seeing how the rest of my team was too valuable to risk right now, I had no choice but to send out Hariyama, who funnily enough, was actually on pace to take Gardevoir down, but I missed an attack at the worst possible moment, and one more Psychic causes yet another death in Victory Road. So long, Hariyama. You did well. I sent Gyarados back out, who thankfully landed a Dragon Rage, and just like that, Wally was finally defeated. Although I lost 2 of my Pokemon, I have to give Wally credit for how much he's grown since Smallville, and I just hope I could continue playing smart on the road to becoming champion. Back at the Pokemon Center, I added Coughing to the team, and after 15 pages of script, decided to let Whismur out of the box for the first time. But heading back into Victory Road, I encountered an Aeron, and because this is the last encounter of the run, why shouldn't I use my Master Ball to catch it? Back to the box you go, Whismur. And when heading down the ladder leading deeper into the cave, I still don't have Flash. Believe me, I tried to make my way through the abyss solely on my own. But after 10 minutes, I gave up and just opened a map on Google, and after running into a trainer that wasn't marked on my guide, we reached the Pokemon League. I spent the rest of my money on full restores, and we were about to find out if I could truly beat a Nuzlocke of a game I've never played. Joining us is Swampert, our starter who very early on proved to be the most powerful Pokemon in the game, sweeping through evil teams and even gym leaders alike. There is no world where she didn't accompany us here. Mighty Anna, our first catch of the run, and the friend who stuck by us for the whole journey. He had a few close calls, but managed to fight on and earn his spot as one of the most important Pokemon I've ever had. Gyarados, a Pokemon I thought would be much worse considering the moves it learned, but he put in the work and survived long enough to fight alongside the others in the final test. A true soldier. Torkoal, a late addition to the team, but an exceedingly strong attacker who could also tank incoming hits decently well. If only I realized his power back when I found him in Magma's hideout. Weezing, a more sacrificial Pokemon admittedly, but shockwaves are amazing coverage after Manectric sacrifice. An explosion could very easily turn a losing battle into a winning one. And finally, Aggron, the final catch of the run, and a Pokemon with excellent defense stats. It just felt wrong not to include her. And with a few deep breaths, I walked through the door and challenged the first Elite Four member, Sydney. He specializes in dark types, but who needs super effective damage when Swampert's right there? When Cacturne took the stage, I instantly changed my mind and swapped in Torkoal, who after getting hit with Leech Seed, took out Cacturne with a single attack. Up next is Absol, who like my encounter way back on Route 120, loved setting up with Swords Dance. Another Flamethrower dealt considerable damage, but a combination of a Citrus Berry and Leech Seed negated my entire previous turn. I swapped in Gyarados as Sydney also swaps into Crawdaunt for some reason, and I attempted to set up with Dragon Dance, but Crawdaunt would soon copy my strategy, and I knew I had to start attacking and not get greedy. A Strength nearly one-hits the Crawdaunt, and with it choosing to greed rather than fight, a second Strength takes it down. Absol is sent back out, but he was incapable of surviving the wrath of Gyarados, and the final Pokemon was Shiftry, who was taken down by a single Strength. That was a lot easier than I expected. The next Elite Four member is Phoebe, a Ghost specialist. But with the low survivability Ghost Pokemon tend to have, Swampert could easily defeat the lead Dusclops and switch out for Mightyena, who after a few howls, swept through the entire rest of the fight with Shadow Ball. The following Elite Four member is Glacia, who specializes in Ice Pokemon, and I had no worries whatsoever. With just how quickly I defeated Sydney and Phoebe, what chance did Glacia have with her Ice Pokemon that Torkoal could melt through with ease? I didn't consider the fact she may have dual water types. I had to spend a turn switching to Swampert, and although Celio proved to be able to take hits moderately well, Swampert managed to take it down with just a few attacks. Glacia's next Pokemon was Glalie, so I fought back with Surf until it was inevitably defeated. It was too risky to keep Swampert in, so I let her take a rest and switched in Gyarados to deal with the second Celio. However, a critical Blizzard took out over half of his health, and with the hail damage, I decided to send in Mightyena instead. but another blizzard brought him down to half health as well. I swapped out for Torkoal knowing it would resist the next blizzard, and while I knew it would likely fall to any water attack, I thought he could at least do some damage before Weezing could clean up with shockwaves. It's not like he'd be any useful against Wallace anyways, but an attract leaves Torkoal immobilized, and for a split second, I panicked and sent out Weezing while trying to save as many Pokemon as possible. I was so focused on making it out with as few deaths as possible that I didn't even consider going for Explosion to turn the tide, and when Weezing fell, I sent Gyarados back out to finish Celio off, and when the second Glalie enters, I swap back over to Torkoal in attempt of defeating it in one go. Flamethrower just barely isn't enough for the one hit, but I got a lucky burn and took it out anyways. The final Pokemon was Walrein, and with the rest of my team already hurt or weak to water, I snapped out of panic mode and decided to leave Torkoal in to maybe get a lucky paralysis on Body Slam. However, the Walrein outsped, and Surf shut down any hope I had for speed control. I sent out Mightyena, who I thought would be faster, but apparently he's not, and that led to the death of our very first catch. That was a very hard one to watch. Gyarados came in to finally start dealing damage, but that critical blizzard from earlier left him with too little HP to defeat the Walrein, so I sent out my starter, who actually did a lot of damage with Earthquake, but unfortunately her winning streak ended here, and this was the most devastating loss of the whole run. My last Pokemon was Aggron, and while she could tank through the next attack, a critical hit would not be enough to defeat her first opponent, and that marked the end of my second Emerald Nuzlocke. I guess I never really was a talented trainer, was I, Scott?